being chased, thrown on the run, and it is caught. Touchdown, Keenan Allen. What a grab.
That's what I'm talking about. Hey, that's what I'm talking about. That's the warrior spirit right there, boy.
Huge sack by Joey Bosa.
90-yard touchdown. 90-yard touchdown.
It's going to be picked off at the 8-yard line by Derwin James.
Herbert sets his feet, takes a shot downfield, has Knighton. Caught! Touchdown, Chargers!
That's the greatest throw I've ever seen.
Yeah, what is going on, Bold fam? Welcome back to the Thunder Down Under Chargers podcast. I am Andy Prophet, your host, joined by my best mates and fellow Chargers tragics, Alistair Lloyd and Jack Reed. Boys, how are we doing a few days removed from this one?
I don't know, Andy. How do you reckon I feel? How do you reckon I feel? How do you reckon I feel, Andy?
What do you think, Jeff?
What do you think? How do you think I feel?
Oh, that's gold.
Yeah, is what it is.
Loved it.
Hey, is what it is. What about you, Alistair?
That's so good. I got nothing to add, man. Like, it helps that we do this show a few days after, because I would have been veins popping out of my neck on the Monday after watching it live with Andy. Every week is a risk of putting holes through plaster. Chargers start 0-2. What can we do? It's a long season ahead, but not the start we wanted from the Bolts, boys.
No, and it's taken the absolute piss out of our preseason predictions. My 13-4 is looking like I've never watched this sport before. Don't even know the team that I support. Jesus, they're not doing us any favours as podcasters. But, like you said, it is a long season. The 0-2 start is very hard to swallow. Let's do our best tonight to be as appropriately positive as we should be, I guess.
Agreed.
Put this loss under the microscope again. Take a look at what has kept us from tying the ledger at 1-1. Week 2 recap inbound shortly. Listeners, thanks for joining us. If you are new, welcome. You can ride with us and cry with us. We appreciate you all tuning in. If you do watch us on YouTube, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. We are also available anywhere you can get your audio podcast, so join in. We'll take a look at what's ahead of us in week 3 as well. Another road game, this time against fellow 0-2 Minnesota Vikings. Okay, Los Angeles Chargers 24, Tennessee Titans 27. Could the defense bounce back after a shellacking from Miami? Is the new look Kellen Moore offense on the up and up? Herbert did show some great poise, looked to move the ball downfield a little bit better than he did once he got going. 305 yards, just shy of 66% completion for 2 scores. Keenan Allen just not aging a day. Still got it, baby. 111 yards. Both passing touchdowns falling into his hands. Defense was a little bit better. Registered 5 sacks on Ryan Tannehill. Surrendered 140 rush yards and 2 scores on 34 carries. None of it was enough. Ultimately, an all-round overtime falter, seeing the Chargers fall to 0-2. Playoff chances dwindling, and the seat of head coach Brandon Staley firmly in the brimstone. Al, I'm going to start with you. I'd be jumping the gun to say that this loss was a little bit better, if you can say such a thing. How does it sit with you, mate?
The week, understandably, has been very negative from the media and Chargers fans. A lot of talk about why is Brandon Staley the coach? Why does he deserve to be a head coach? We were fancied to be a powerhouse. It's year 3. Everything should be taking off. Why don't we have liftoff? I can sympathise with that viewpoint. It is frustrating to still be seeing some of the same mistakes popping up, the inability to close games, some of the mental errors, the defensive penalties, the coverage breakdowns. All of that makes sense. And you're in a precarious position if you start a season 0-2. It just means you have very little margin for error, and you're going to have to transform things fundamentally and quickly. However, to turn it slightly positively, there wouldn't be many teams that start a year 0-2 that have a quarterback of the quality of Justin Herbert and a total point differential of -5. There's been no 3-4 touchdown blowout. Both games, the ball was in the hands of the offense with a chance to win at the end. In this game, 2 chances, right, to end regulation and to start overtime. So we'll unpack it all throughout the show. But if you just looked at improvement from week 1 to week 2, I saw some glimmers of hope that made me think there is a chance the team's not as bad as everyone's making us out to be. What did you think, Jack?
Oh, I would agree. Very agreeable with what you have just pointed out. I guess when you look, the NFL is a league that is majority of games are decided by a score or less. The point differential is 5. We're moving the ball. We're scoring the ball. Yes, there are moments in the game that we'd love to have back. Some of those penalties are absolute just momentum killers. For those of you who believe in momentum, there are some people that don't believe in momentum. I'm of the former. I believe momentum is a big thing in sport. I had a rough time watching this. I got up at 5 a.m. with little Molly and didn't finish watching the game until probably 12 at that night. So it was a heck of a day on Monday. But
I couldn't wait to sink back into the chair and suck that one down.
For first-time listeners as well, might just need to clarify what waking up at 5 with a little bit of Molly means.
That's true, actually. Yeah. I've just had a daughter. She's 3 or 4 weeks. She's three and a bit weeks old. And her name is Molly. No, I'm definitely not going out partying all night. And what made it worse is that after I finished the first half, I'm going, this isn't looking too bad. Then my phone fucking vibrated. I looked at it. 24-27 Chargers lose. So, Andy, yes, I had to wait all day to sit down at 11 o'clock to go, I'm going to sit through an overtime loss. Fantastic. But
Yeah.
But with that headset on, I then watched the second half. I didn't think we played as poorly. And then I went back and watched the Miami game. I still didn't think we played poorly. The defense, big plays, yes. This team is an almost team. It's the story of the Chargers, but I am a little more bullish than I was last week.
Yeah, it's a fair call. Like, there are elements like there were in week 1, probably more this week, where the offense plays well, has a great series. We were up 11-0 to start off the game. And then big explosive play to Treylon Burks. 70 yards, Derrick Henry just heaps in, and then you just, like you say, like you talk about momentum, Jack, you really I felt, at least anyway, watching that, I just thought, now they're going to feel like they need to, even though we're still more than a field goal ahead, still had to kind of force it down. And I think I felt I saw that a little bit with Herbert. There was just not too much control with how he ran tempo. I thought he, at times, was good at rushing up to the line to get the play off and, keep the defense on their toes. But there were also times where he didn't need to do that. Like, we could have soaked up a little bit more clock and actually stopped them. Things weren't necessarily working all the time. We're going to get into it, but when instances like that falter, like the first and second downs, there's an interesting play call on like a 2nd and 7, for example, and we run the ball up the middle for 1 yard and then 2 of 14 third down conversions. It's going to be the biggest point on all 3 of our game notes. You can't really win a game of football when you're just not converting. You're not extending drives. And there was just a little bit of misstep with how we were kind of flowing offensively. On the other side, we'd kept the Titans to negative 16 pass yards up to the 8-minute mark of the second quarter, and we're looking great. Obviously, then the Burks explosive, but it just didn't seem like you spoke about it earlier in the week offline, Jack, about the cohesion. We're struggling to play consistent complementary football where you might have one good series or 2 good series by the offense, defense lets the opposition score, and we're not getting bang for our buck as to what we're putting out there offensively. We're not getting the stops and the turnovers. We definitely saw that last week, and at times we really saw it this week. Giving up 27 points to an offense that looked like they'd barely played football last week against the Saints was, pretty hard to watch. But look, there was improvements from the defense. 5 sacks, as I said, that's 5 more than we had last week. And Jack, you're right, we are moving the ball down the field. This week that ADOT was 11.1. So
it was big.
There is improvements, but I think it's just like an overall lack of gelling, being able to complement one another and back one another up.
Alistair, I'm going to jump in here because you've done a bit of digging. Andy, you alluded to the 70-yard bomb to Burks, and then there was a 49-yard completion as well. Just killers. And Alistair, these are happening in cover 4 packages. These are happening in even, was it a quarters coverage as well?
Yeah.
These are coverage that is designed to not give up big plays. What is going on? What is going on the back end?
Yeah, so a couple of stats to back that up. And Daniel Popper posted both of these on Twitter from The Athletic. Chargers have allowed more completions of 30-plus yards than any team in the NFL since the start of the 2021 season. That's 55 in 36 games. To your point, Jack, a lot of these explosive passes are happening off cover 6 defense, also known as quarter-half coverage. So one half of the field, if you kind of draw a vertical plane down the middle from the center to the safety, one half of the field is kind of playing a cover 2. So you've kind of just got the one deep player. And then on the other side, you're playing cover 4. And they call it cover 6 because 4 plus 2 is 6. And on that cover 4 side, you have 2 deep defenders. So it kind of looks like a cover 3 coverage. Cover 6 has 3 deep defenders, but they're kind of slanted. So 2 are on one side and 1's on the other. What you usually do with that coverage is you slant the 2 to the side where you're most concerned about the dangerous receiver. So I expect us to use that against the Vikings and Justin Jefferson this week. What we're finding are the explosives are being given up to the weak side defender who's essentially on man coverage with less help over the top. And Daniel Popper said that so far the Chargers this year have played that coverage on 12 passing plays, and they've allowed explosive completions on 7 of them, including ones of 35, 49, and 70 yards. And what's happening is you're isolating that one cornerback. They isolated Treylon Burks on Asante for the 70-yard bomb, and later on they isolated Chris Moore on Michael Davis. Now, I'm more critical of the former than the latter. The latter, I think that's there's nothing wrong with that. That's how it's meant to be designed. I do have questions why you would line up Asante, a 5'9" cornerback, one-on-one with Treylon Burks, a much larger, faster receiver. So that's not working. Also, and I'll throw a question back to you, Jack. It was interesting to hear Michael Davis after the game because what's happening right now is Staley's clearly given up on the idea of Asante Samuel being the star slot corner. That was meant to be the plan. And this week after the game, he said, no, Jar Taylor is our star. And on the weekend, Asante played 65 snaps, all outside. And on the other side, JC Jackson played 41 and Michael Davis played 24. And after the game, Michael Davis said to Daniel Popper, playing cornerback is all about rhythm. If you're going in and out, you lose your rhythm. But still, it doesn't matter. The opponent doesn't care. What do you think about Staley's revolving cornerback approach? Is this a problem?
The rhythm is very much connected to the momentum conversation, which is connected to the cohesion, kind of these ephemeral, fleeting words. What do they actually mean? How can you quantify them? Staley has always said that he is a DB guy. He wants to be a DB factory. He wants the back end, next man up, next man up. It's clearly not working. It really isn't. And Michael Davis has shown in the previous seasons, he hasn't obviously been the first choice. Last year, he wasn't the first choice. He came in later in the season and performed really well. And that was getting time on task. And that's a fucking teacher saying sorry, but time on the field, getting some rhythm, getting some momentum. Perhaps the coverage is so complex that constantly changing cornerbacks, the defensive line and the offensive line talk about cohesion and, you've got to understand what the guy next to you is going to do. And that takes time. That takes 12 months. In the back end, I assume it would be the same thing, is that you get used to seeing what JC Jackson does, what Asante does, what Davis does. But if you keep chopping and changing guys, how can you find that rhythm? And maybe that's a bit of an issue that Staley, perhaps no other podcast has actually picked up on, which is quite interesting.
Or Spanos or Telesco, because there's an element, maybe not, we don't know, right? But it's interesting that the guy who's kind of getting the start is JC Jackson, the guy coming back from injury who they spent a lot of money on, and Michael Davis, who played better last year. He was a fantastic corner last year. He was cornerback 1 for any team. And he's the one who's been relegated with Asante, the second-round pick, playing every snap. Michael Davis, undrafted free agent, who's coming out of contract at the end of this year.
Interesting.
Where is the direction coming from? No, not sure. We won't know.
I'll argue your point a little bit, Jack, because I completely agree that the rhythm of the offensive lineman is imperative, needing to know what one another's doing. But you'd have to think that for the most part, everyone has a relatively single objective for their role in the cornerback room. You play as a team, but if you're in man coverage, you just take your fucking man. I'll do my job, you do yours. It's the safeties that need to help over the top, and there's been elements where that hasn't really happened. Where with Bosa on a snap count, and might I just chuck that in? 9 pass rush snaps, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. God, if we could afford to do that every week, phenomenal. Now, I won't forget about Tooley, but we'll definitely touch on him. And that green dot wearer who we slammed last week, and just must have listened to the show and just gone, I got to show those Aussie guys that I'm all a bit more than what I put out on week 1. So yeah, an element to that, and I was actually going to interject when you started talking about momentum earlier, because that was quite a poignant thing that I thought Michael Davis came out and said. That was, how can we get into the rhythm and the flow of our jobs when it's like have a series, sit out 2, play a couple of snaps here and there. You're not really like, we've all played competitive team sports before, and what it's like when you're not on the ground to start off with. It's a different thing. It's a psychological thing. If you're out on the ground at the start of the game, you're in it from the first second. If you're benched for the first half or whatever, you're just going like, I could have done so many other things with my time, that kind of thing. Oh, sure, these guys are getting paid millions of dollars, and it's completely different to what we ever did, even if you were a rung or 2 below pro sports. Like it doesn't.
Well,
I've
never felt that feeling before. I was going to say it's foreign
Andy,
to me, but must feel bad, bro.
Andy, can I just, you touched on the Bosa thing there, and let's do a counter argument to the momentum. Bosa was not on the field, and he comes on and plays really well. So this is a question that I had written down, and I'll pass to Andy and Alistair. You might have something. Is this the Joey Bosa we should see more often? Snap count, he's not gassed because we know he goes 100% all the time, trying to get the sack, trying to do well. Realistically, comes on, he's fresh, beats his man twice, makes some tackles for loss, gets some sacks. Should we be seeing more of this? Should we be seeing Joey Bosa for 25 snaps? What do you think?
And Mac?
Oh, yeah, look, I don't agree with that, because they're both getting paid $30 million a year, and they are massive, massive parts of our salary cap that potentially cost us from upgrading elsewhere, like a fucking decent tight end other than Gerald Everett. Trey McKitty, 5 snaps each for the first 2 weeks. Why was he on the team after the end of last season? I should stop bashing that guy, but
I didn't see the answer going in that direction.
But look, the reality, I'll always find a way. I'm like a homing beacon on that guy. But it's like what I actually saw from the pass rush, especially, was the use of some really fun stunts. But Bosa's first sack, he started outside the almost like 7 tech, rushed in. Sure, it helps that Skoronski wasn't playing, and they had, I think, Xavier Newman there at left guard for a fair whack of time. Kenneth Murray took advantage of that too with an awesome sack. Does that happen if Skoronski plays? Arguably their best lineman from week 1. Doesn't matter, because he wasn't there, and we made the most of what we had against us. So it's a really good point that he maybe is one of those guys that doesn't need momentum. Personally, I think we need to see him on the field more and 100%. Cook up a little bit of different stuff. That some of those stunts starting out wide, allowing I think it was Tooley just at the sort of 5 on the inside of him to make the tackle and the guard commit, and then balk inside and just swallow Tannehill whole. Like that got me up and off the couch for sure. So look, it's hard to say, but what Staley I think is trying to develop with listing Ja'Sir Taylor as the starting slot now at the start of week 3 just seems like you had all off season and the preseason to do this, and maybe it's something that we harp on about this a lot, but maybe it's something that you don't have the opportunity to see in live games where you don't play your starters in the preseason. You can't say, this is the lockdown CB1, this is CB2 for this reason, but Staley's actually rotating those other three cornerbacks, Samuel Jr., Davis and Jackson in, based on, how they performed in the last game and how they're training and things like that. So it's a little bit sort of fair-weathered in my opinion, but like that Burks 70-yarder was just a horrible personnel mismatch. He's giving up 5 inches on Treylon Burks and he got absolutely torched. He did the right thing by covering the inside. I think Gilman was just nowhere to be seen. So, look, those things happen. It's just the regularity with which they happen, which is probably the biggest concern. We'll see.
I think the more we can rotate players to keep them fresh, the better, is my perspective. I do understand where Andy's coming from, that you are paying the big bucks to the big rushes to stay on the field for the longest. But if that's going to be detrimental to their output and production, then what's the point? I more feel that way about Khalil Mack, who is an older player than Joey Bosa, and we're asking a lot out of him. I thought it doesn't show up in the PFF grades, but against the run, I thought he was a trooper on the weekend. But you're seeing he's not coming through from a pass rush perspective like he probably would have hoped. I see this as being a problem across different levels, like in the linebacking core, just having Kendricks and Murray playing 60-something snaps each. Hopefully Dayon Henley's addition can mean that gets spread. And I don't want to discount the fact that Chris Rumph has been injured so far to start the season. And if he was healthy, plus with Tooley coming along, maybe we can see more of a rotation of Mack and Bosa. Because I agree, Jack, Bosa's fresh. You bring him in on third down and he's a weapon. He can blow up a game. So now that we're talking about the defense, I just think, yes, the whole talk this week has been around Chargers are 32nd in DVOA, 32nd in pass yards allowed. A lot of that is referable to week 1 against Miami. If we just focus on this game against the Titans, yes, the Titans are probably not one of the better offenses in the league, so you've got to acknowledge that. But the Chargers defense started the game with a turnover on downs, punt. And then in the third and fourth quarters, when the game was there to be won, they also had 3 series in a row that went punt. The run defense showed signs of life, I thought. Keeping Derrick Henry to that kind of tally was a good effort. Yes, Spears got off the leash a little bit, but overall, signs of improvement. Only 5 missed tackles compared to 9 missed tackles last week. So maybe I am kind of drinking the Kool-Aid because I am pro-Staley, so I'm going to be looking for causes for hope. But it's got to have been a positive step from last week with a hope that against Minnesota we'll see another step. The next thing's to work on coverage and being in the right spot. But the little things like pass rush, run defense, stopping the offense, making them punt was better this week against the Titans.
Alistair, I'm gonna throw something right back at you, and I'll just give you some ammo of what I've got, and you said yourself you're a defender of Staley, so here we go. My question, so you can think about it, I'll give you some stuff after, is Brandon Staley's scheme and his success built on the back of generational players? We look at his time in Chicago. He had a different Khalil Mack. He had a generational MVP, defensive MVP player. He's the outside linebackers coach, coaching Khalil Mack to incredible. In Denver, he had Von Miller, who is also an outside linebacker. So he's working with Von Miller there in 2019. And of course, as DC in LA, he's got Aaron Donald, arguably the most disruptive player in PFF's history. Now,
and Ramsey.
And, well, I'm not putting Ramsey in generational. I'm probably putting Mack, Miller, and Donald in that generational bracket. So, when we start to look at the run defense, will the run defense actually ever be any good? I look at this and I go, I don't think so. Because, look at this. SJD, 6th round. Austin Johnson, picked in the 2nd round. Okay, not too bad. He's 29. Fox, UDFA. Nick Williams, 7th round. Scott Matlock, round 6. Obonia, 5th round. We have not invested decent talent at the interior nose tackle, nor have we gone out to find it. So I go back to you. Is Brandon Staley's scheme built on the back of generational players? That's why this defense is not working, because he doesn't have one queen, let's call him, and if we're speaking chess, to deploy in that dominant role.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this succinct as I can. The last 2 years of Staley's defense has not worked. So if you want to take that position that you think he only had success in LA with the Rams because of those guys, sure. He hasn't had success with the Chargers. With the Rams in 2020, though, I thought what made that defense really impressive was guys who had heretofore not been good footballers had career years. Darius Williams, John Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, Troy Reader, Troy Hill. And they had Donald and Ramsey, but what made that a great group is they coalesced together under the one DC. So, I don't know. I thought that year he did a good job, except, and we haven't mentioned this, they got torched by Green Bay in the divisional round that year, and Rodgers took the piss out of that defense, put up 30 points. So, yes, they were great during the regular season. They failed when it mattered. Since he's come across, they haven't been so good. On your point about defensive tackles, those guys don't get drafted high really anyway, unless they're elite. So I don't, unless you really want to
unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles, where you just shore up the defensive line in the first and second rounds all the time.
Yes, true. If you want to take a Quinnen Williams with pick 2 or that caliber, yes.
Jordan Davis, Vita Vea.
Yes, but if you believe, which Staley and Fangio do, in playing light boxes and maybe de-emphasizing that position, they figure you can make do with third round or later picks and just coach them up.
Yeah, but he's had Donald, the most disruptive interior pass rusher, on the best defense that he coached to get him the head coach job. So I'm building a bit of a narrative against him here, but I think it was just worth mentioning.
No, it's a good point as well. Well, this time the elite players are on the edge, and it's not really making a difference so far.
Well, it's something that the opposing offensive coordinators can work towards when generating their run game. They just add more dual tight end sets to double team Mack and Bosa and sort of make them struggle to set the edge. It also just makes the interior just very vulnerable to runs up the middle. So, yeah, look, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but there were improvements this week, so let's hope. Look, I always sort of kind of harp back. You hear about it a lot. Is his textbook too complex? Is he trying to teach specialist maths to general maths students? That kind of thing. Like, is he throwing in stuff that's maybe too hard for these guys to understand? I don't know. There's a lot of different coverages, a lot of different requirements from his DBs. I don't know. But he's also come from a wide group of very good safeties in his time. Now, maybe not generational gun safeties, but he's had Eddie Jackson, Justin Simmons. Like, he's had good guys everywhere he's been, good safeties. And we've got Derwin James, sure, but when you use him so much in the box, as we do, because, look, we can't not touch on a great game that Derwin had. He was everywhere, if not a little too much over the top with that awful bonehead penalty that he gave away on that third quarter drive that cost us. I don't know. I feel like we lack a little bit of the experience and leadership from guys like Alohi, and he's still young, he's still in maybe his 4th year or something, but yeah, it's just not. It's a sort of different kettle of fish. So I don't know if it's square peg, round hole stuff, trying to sort of force it on. But I think what it boils down to is you can see that across various games, not just this year, but in the past, we've had all aspects of the defense play well. Whether they all do it at once, it's hard. It's hard to see that there's consistent. We go back to it, cohesion from the playing group, and a lot of criticism does fall on Staley, but the players have to execute their roles, and you see coverage break up, blow ups, and things like that. So, do we want to talk offense, guys? Move on. Is there anything else we want to add? We've obviously got to talk about those couple of roughing the passer penalties, which was really disappointing to see. I did say the late the defenseless receiver hit from Derwin James when the receiver was 8 yards short of the line to gain, and he's just poleaxed him. SJD.
Just quickly on
gotta
that,
know.
I also didn't like Derwin's presser today. He said, I'm still not sure what else I could have done on that play, but it's a bang bang play. I tell you what you could have done: recognize that the guy's 6 yards short of the line to gain, so you don't almost need to tackle him at all. I know that's hard to say because it happens in a fraction of a second, but it was what is it, 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 13?
3rd and 14, and he was 8 yards short, I think.
So when you're that far away, you've almost just got to let him catch it, and you don't need to do what you did anyway. I didn't like that. It didn't sound like he'd reflected and he was like, I don't know what I should have done. It's a tough sport.
Look, he's a football player, not an orator, but I never really take much out of what Derwin's press conferences have to say because, yeah, man, we just do our job and we got to go out there and play. You're like, okay, you said this last week, so cool. I know you've got it embedded in your contract to speak to the media, but hey. All right, well, I'm not going to harp too much on those mismatches. We do have to talk about Kenny Murray wearing the green dot. His role was improved. I did suggest we move on to offense, but we need to speak about it because I can't remember really a better game from him as a Charger. Not in the last couple of years anyway. Best game under Staley. It was great. He got pass rush. I think he had 5 tackles, got a sack. He was running downhill. He wasn't getting bogged up in the run game. So, well played. I thought it would have been a bit of struggle for him wearing the green dot, not having Kendricks there. But look, he really led from the front, and it was awesome. Communicated well, as Staley pointed out. So, good to see some positive improvement from Kenny.
Yeah, generally just an all-around game, I thought. Like coverage as well, he was half decent. Made some big bang-bang plays. He diagnosed Derrick Henry's run, spotted the gap. Played really well. And credit where credit's due. Let's put a couple of games together, Kenny. Let's just put a couple of games together like that now. With Akers going to the Vikings, hopefully he can have some bang plays there as well.
Cool.
And
do we want to say bang anymore or
bang? Yeah. And Tully. Yeah,
Tully was. Tully was really good. Awesome. Just. Oh, mate. You know when he picked up Bosa...
He's a big boy.
Oh, isn't he?
21.
Yep.
He's 21 years old.
Yeah, when he picked Bosa up from Bosa's sack, he was like, that was so good, sir. That was so good. Bosa's like, yeah, get in here, son. Yeah. It was good to see. There were really fun, positive aspects out of that defense, but just allowing, I think that was Tannehill's second best pass completion. He went 20 of 24. Made him look like he was 12 years younger than he is. So... stuff like that's pretty hard to swallow when you break it down, but yeah. All right, let's move on to the offense. Jack, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to go... Alistair, I'm going to throw straight to you. I've got 2 questions for you. Do you notice a difference in Justin Herbert and him trying to control the scheme a bit more? There's your first question. And if you were to give a rating out of 10 for Kellen Moore's 2 games as play caller, what would you give?
Ooh.
All yours.
That's a humdinger.
Yes, Herbert was empowered to make changes at the line under Lombardi as well. I do remember some kill and changes, but I have noticed him doing a little more of that. He checked out of a couple of plays noticeably this week. One was successful with a nice run, the other wasn't. So yes, I think he's kind of empowered to do more of that in Kellen Moore's scheme. I would give Moore a 6.5 out of 10. So far, which is kind of C+, satisfactory areas. Do you know why? I think there's some questionable usage things going on. Like this week, a big one was Dotson over Spiller.
Yeah.
I know that they view Dotson as an Eckler replacement who's better in the passing game. So, yes, I get it from that perspective. But per PFF, Dotson's 4 carries for 6 yards were all through the A gap. And to me, that's just a missed opportunity with your 4th round, 200-plus pound running back who looked good in the preseason against a big, strong defensive line. There was a 3rd and 4 draw call that I think was a Herbert check, to be honest, where he's just run straight into the line. I thought, what the hell was that? Also, Kellen Moore's doing a bit too much like wide receiver screen to Mike Williams, jet sweep to Mike Williams, stuff. And in the second half, in this game, when the defense went punt, 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 the Chargers ran the ball on first down 5 out of 9 times before that last drive in regulation. And I just thought, feel the stuff, brother. I put it up on Twitter that the play calling sequence that bothered me the most was one that came up 10 minutes left in the third quarter. At this stage, we're trailing 17-14. We start with the ball at our 25, 1st and 10. Herbert passed to Mike Williams, 11 yards, 1st and 10. Herbert passes to Mike Williams again, 11 yards, 1st and 10. We're at midfield. Run the ball to Kelly, 3 yards. Run the ball to Kelly up the middle, 1 yard. Herbert sacked on 3rd and 6. Justin Simmons punting. Like, that's that feel where you've just started off a drive with 2 11-yard passes. I don't know. So, but 200 plus yards on the ground last week. So lots to build on there, but there's been a scant criticism of Kellen Moore so far online. It's all Staley's hopeless, fire Staley, what's this defense doing, 32nd. A lot of that's legitimate. But in both games, the offense has had the ball at the end of the game with a chance to win, and it has not happened yet due to various breakdowns, right? In this game, in overtime, 3rd down, the ball got snapped and Mike Williams is in motion and doesn't run around.
What is going on?
Yeah, there was a few of them that looked like they had no idea. I actually think that last drive was more on Herbert than it was on Kellen Moore, but for sure, I agree with you. I think that first Dotson on 3rd and 3, the run up the middle, they sort of knew with where they were on the field that they were probably going to go for it on 4th down, and they executed and converted, so that's okay. But it happened again, and it was like, man, I know you're going to struggle running spread against such a fast, violent defensive line, but like, yeah, man, use Kelly or use Spiller in those if you're going to run it up the middle.
And the offensive line held up kind of well too, to be honest. I know, like, they only allowed
Johnson
8 or 9
and Sawyer
pressures.
had rough days.
They had a couple of rough snaps.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought the pocket was relatively clean. Maybe it's because they were running the ball more than I would have liked. But I don't know. It wasn't a completely tight operation. When you go 2 of 14 on 3rd down...
Stinks, man.
What grade would you give it, Jack? You're the teacher amongst us.
What? At 2 out of 14 is, mate, get out of school. Go home. Go home.
Yeah,
and
come
be
a tradie like me. Drop out of school and be a tradie like me.
No, I wouldn't trust someone who gets 2 out of 14 to build a house or do electrics. Sorry. I did also. I just had in my notes. Yeah, AC/DC. That's right. Everett. I thought Everett's efforts on a couple of occasions were really good, and the way that he ran with power, and that was really good to see that effort.
Ran with violence.
He broke about 10 tackles on the field on that one play.
Love that.
Love it.
Yeah, so
Love
good.
It.
At times, I was genuinely concerned he was going to have that ball. There was one that I think it went to the right side, and maybe got like a 7-yard gain. He just wasn't going down. And Jack Gibbons, the linebacker for the Titans, is uppercutting the absolute shit out of him, trying to pop that ball out. Nope, not having it. Gerald Everett, dog. Loved it.
Yeah, and I guess the other sort of question I had of myself from last week's pod was, are there too many weapons to spread the ball? I mean, Gerald Everett caught 3. Keenan Allen caught 8. Mike Williams caught 8. Stone Smart made an amazing catch. Quentin Johnson still
had
not
no
really
right catching that one. No right catching that. He sucked it in like a Hoover.
Josh Palmer, 5 targets for 3 catches. So yeah, spreading the ball out okay, which is fine. So yeah, listen, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the usage of Quentin Johnson. I know. Yeah, which, like you said, we do have offensive weapons and people to throw to. Josh Palmer included as well. Almost had that. Just get your toe down. That would have been sensational.
Did he get it down?
Yeah, I stand by it. I think it was a good call. I thought there was actually, on the whole, I thought the officiating was pretty subpar both ways, but they got that one right for mine. Is it a concern that Elijah Dotson's just about getting more receiving targets than Quentin Johnson? Darius Davis as well. Like, I don't know if I'm spot on with that, but like he's getting 2 targets and sub 10 yards. And you're talking about the big 4 guys that get drafted in the first round: Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, from their first 2 weeks and making a mockery. And QJ looks like
10 snaps.
Yeah, it's odd. Maybe that just comes down to what the personnel usage and what Kellen Moore is trying to do with, maybe not showing his hand completely early. But, mate, we're 0-2 and we're coming up against the Vikings in Minnesota. We've got Dallas. We've got the Chiefs. We've got, even the Raiders in week 4 looks like anything could bloody happen. And it's a bit of a concern. So, Kellen, I'm about the same as you. I think 6.5. We're definitely leaving points on the field, and he's probably not completely to blame with that. But I'm not liking any of this. Keenan Allen in motion, and Mike Williams in motion. He's a contested catch guy. He's not a bubble screen. Can't stutter step and beat that first tackle. Roger McCreary in patches was absolutely all over him and smashed him at the line. And there's nothing worse for you. That bubble screen, I think it was 2nd and 2, lost a yard, which just preceded that 3rd and 3 for Elijah Dotson. He kind of tried to wiggle, did a spin on the spot, and his leg flailed up in the air. I said this to you when we were watching. I was like, he is not the kind of guy that you want to be seen doing that sort of stuff. With his injury history, you just sure, get a bit of body contact down the field, but that's just that sort of thing just doesn't seem like it's really bang for buck. So we'll see what happens this week. But look, we've got to get off to a hot start because, as we'll get into pretty soon, the Vikes have many weapons, and Kirk Cousins isn't a dud, man. He's not a Tannehill. He can do all right. Jack, anything else you want?
I was going to say 22 of 38 targets directed at Keenan and Mike. So there's an opportunity to get others more involved. Before we go to our awards, Andy, I had a question for you. And it's around Brandon Staley's press conference. Because Jack's weighed in, and the quote that caught some ears is, he was asked about whether there's a Jags loss hangover. And he got a bit defensive, to be fair. He showed a bit of verve. He said, if you've seen our training camp or seen the way we've played in the first 2 games, it hasn't had an impact on our team whatsoever. Now, on Bolts from the Blue, Tau 837, one of our listeners, of course, he said he came across as excessively defensive and frankly delusional. He should have expected every question he got in that press conference. There's no way to win that press conference in that situation. He should just calmly answer the questions like Herbert does, with bland answers about needing to get better, or even take the Belichick on to Cincinnati approach. The defensiveness is the worst way to react here. It just causes people to remember how inexperienced he is and wonder if this job situation is too big for him.
Tao makes a good point. He usually does. I actually liked the emotion in it. I know you've got to kind of separate that as the coach and as the leader of this team, but I kind of enjoyed it, to be honest. At least it sort of shows he bloody cares, and he ain't there to make friends with Dan Popper, and then he took it out on Jeff, and it was good. It was good watching, to be honest, because you see that game and you don't want to hear them just give that boring kind of answer, generic, what we did wasn't good enough, next question, that kind of stuff. I want to see a bit of heart and emotion. I'm an emotive guy.
We love this. We're Aussies. We get this absolutely. In the AFL.
Absolutely. We love seeing coaches fight with journos. Nothing better. You've just lost a game in overtime that you should have won. You had multiple opportunities to do so. Be pissed off, man. Absolutely. I see what Tao's saying from a professional level, but nah, I don't.
Interesting.
I liked it, to be honest.
Now, Jack, yeah. I reckon you'd have an opinion on this for sure. You're a teacher. What's
far
your
more
kind
reserved
of
than the likes of me, for sure.
From the leadership perspective, what's kind of your take on this, my friend?
Okay, well, you've set me up really well, and this is a little bit of my teachable moment. I'm calling this From Red to Blue, How the Chargers Can Learn from the All Blacks. Little bits of this is coming from an article by Simon Austin written in June 2021. No battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, said Helmuth von Moltke from 1880. More recent one, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and that's by Mike Tyson. Rapid breathing, sweaty palms, racing mind. Most of us have experienced this feeling of being in an exam or interview and feeling control is slipping away. The New Zealand All Blacks described it as being hot, heated, overwhelmed and tense. In this state, it's difficult to think clearly, execute properly or make the right decisions. As overwhelming favourites to win the World Cup in 2007, that's exactly what seemed to afflict the All Blacks as they completely unravelled when caught in a French storm in the quarterfinals. The overwhelming favourites lost. Ringing any bells? What the All Blacks recognised was that their mentality and ability to keep attention on performance during moments of critical pressure suffered in the last 3 World Cups they'd been in. The implication was that they had choked. If you think of physical, technical and tactical as forming 3 legs of a stool, the stool isn't balanced unless you have a psychological strength as well. So they changed their training and preparation. What is the link between the All Blacks and the Chargers? Well, this is the teachable moment. The final drive, the final snap, the final sack, the INT in the last 10 seconds. These are not where games are lost. It is penalties for roughing the passer in the third quarter, personal fouls, offsides to start the game, giving up sacks at inopportune times, playing inconsistent football for the entire 4 quarters, offense, defense, never in balance, yin and yang, fighting, always in a form of koyonaskatsi, which is a Hopi Indian word for life out of balance. In essence, the perception is that Chargers and the Stallion players are constantly choking. It is small parts that makes the whole. We're playing too hot. We're playing red hot in critical moments. Experienced players are seeing too much red. That feeling of being tight, inhibited, anxious, short, snappy press conferences. Neurologically, your brain function lights up when your attention gets diverted because the parts of the brain associated with the fight or flight and fear become heated. The key for Staley and elite athletes is to move back into this blue phase where mental technique, this is where mental training comes in. First, a player needs to recognize the red flags, then it takes deliberate effort to get attention back and not be diverted by unhelpful emotion. Brandon Staley alluded to, did you see training camp? Did you see, were you there? Did you see how hard they went? Okay, sure. But not all training and preparation is physical. In fact, for experienced elite athletes, physical, technical, and tactical training are a given. They come ready to train in those 3 pillars their entire careers. The way forward for this football team to consistently win games is, I believe, to begin focus on their psychological strength throughout the game's moments. Each snap makes the whole. That is what separates teams in the NFL. Those are the inches that define either success or failure. Can Brandon Staley do that? Wait and see. Class dismissed.
Yeah. Nice, mate. Look, I love your take on it. Al, in particular, loved the little nod to Indian, what have you, but I always enjoy you. I'd sit down in a classroom with you. I actually can't remember. I was listening too much to and you unmuted yourself just to laugh, so... Thanks, mate. Love the teachable moment, and I think you're pretty spot on. It's all about just putting it out on the field and actually executing. So it's a way of, eliciting that to the players, really, isn't it? And just making sure that they're in the right space. All right, well, we can't do anything about the 0-2 start. What we can do is look forward to week 3. So let's get into it. Out of the Chargers camp this week, as we talked about, I'm just going to say straight up, I love the fire in the belly out of Staley. And then we went back to Mr. Typical classic nice guy, blowing smoke up any ass that would take it when we were coming up against the Vikes. Phrasing, yeah, we're playing that. Good mates with Kevin O'Connell, best buds,
Love each
Thank
other.
God we're not playing the Cards this year because, Jesus, there'd be some kissing. But look, the reality is there's a lot to worry about. There's multiple X factors that we're coming up against in this Vikes offense and a quarterback that's more than capable. So as far as personnel go, I think Kendricks and Eckler, they have no set timelines on their return. I think Henley and Rumph are back. Limited practice for Bosa, but we'll ease that back in. Yeah, that's going to help. That's going to help, like we said, the rotations across the line and a little bit more. I want to see Dion Henley in the middle of the field, man. He excited me in the preseason. So as far as the team goes, I don't think there was any other major injury concerns. Mike Williams had a bit of an ankle knock, but he was, just did Mike Williams stuff at practice today. So wouldn't be too worried about him not playing on the weekend. Al, what did the Vikes do last week? How are they looking?
Well, they've had a few extra days to prepare because they played on Thursday Night Football at Lincoln Financial Field against the Eagles, a game which they lost 34-28. My view is the score kind of flatters them somewhat by the end of the game, but they had their chances. So in this one, the tale of the tape was that the Eagles ran the ball 48 times for 259 rushing yards, an incredible total, with DeAndre Swift 28 attempts for 174 yards, doing his best Marshall Faulk impersonation, and Devonta Smith having 4 catches for 131 yards and a tuddy. On the other side of the ball, you had Kirk Cousins with, I thought, a highly flattering 31 for 44, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Fluffing.
A lot of that in junk time. Justin Jefferson destroyed Darius Slay, 11 catches, 159 yards. Now, the bit that's unlucky, even though the Eagles, for the most part, had a 13-part lead or more, the Vikings lost a special teams fumble early. That doesn't happen very often. And they had a touchdown erased for that old school rule where Justin Jefferson fumbled the ball extending for the pylon through the end zone at the 1 yard line. And
Tell us what you think about that rule, mate.
I was saying, Andy, it should be it should be a safety and a punt back to you, but to give the ball to the opposition and they start at the 25, it just seems like the punishment doesn't fit the crime, right? Really, you've got the ball at the 1 yard line because you try to score a touchdown. The ball goes to the opposition. I don't know. Seems too harsh. Anyway, time of possession, Eagles dominated it. 39 minutes to 20 minutes. The Vikings couldn't stop them on the ground at all. And really, I thought the Eagles were the better team. But Vikings put up 28 points. So they kept fighting. They kept doing their thing. They've got playmakers. Let's get into it, Jack. What do you think of the Vikings' strengths in this game that we've got to face them?
3 things, you touched on it. Opposition X factor, none other than Justin Jefferson, now has more receiving yards than the entire Chicago Bears. I don't know. That's probably not the right stat, but it's something like that. His average depth of target is over 13 yards. He already has 4 contested catches. He's had 150 yards in 2 games. He is a Madden cheat code. Cousins threw a ball to him. I don't know how it got through in double coverage. Guys scissoring him. Yes, we're back to scissoring. And the ball just finds it and he makes it. He's incredible. This is a little bit of a Trojan horse that I've found that I've also linked into next morning's headlines, but the Vikings band together to form War Party in coverage. Weirdly enough, per PFF, the Vikings have the 4th best coverage through 2 games. Bynum, Asamoah, Hicks, Pace, Evans are all playing really well in the coverage game, especially their linebackers and Bynum, who had a bit of a down year in 2022. And I've got to I love you, man. It's a weird one, but Brian O'Neill at right tackle, quietly become one of the best right tackles in the league, building on his performances each year. No sacks, no hits, 1 hurry allowed through 2 games. And given that he was up against some pretty nasty pass rushes in the Eagles, he's done very well. So I love you, man, Brian O'Neill. That's what I kind of had for the strengths and Chargers threats.
Can I jump in on a rated rook, mate, before you go to the weaknesses, Andy? Ivan Pace Jr. was a guy I talked about in the I love you mans for the linebackers. Small guy out of the University of Cincinnati, has no business playing in the NFL. He is that small and that thin. But he had like a 95 blitz grade per PFF. Undrafted free agent, well, he was a fantastic blitzing linebacker against the Eagles. Ends the game with an 86.3 overall grade as an undrafted rookie. He's a starter. So, good pick from the Vikings.
He backed that up from a 75 in week 1 as well. Very, very impressive. QB hit and a sack. Not bad. I'll actually jump in. I thought Theo Jackson, when he came onto the field, I reckon he might usurp starting safety Josh Metellus. Very solid outing for him in week 2. Look, as far as the weaknesses go, obviously, Al, you touched on what the Vikings and Swift was able to do on the ground. Their run defense is cause for concern, even if their secondary is doing well, which doesn't really favour us because we don't have Eckler. So even though we had over 200 rushing yards in week 1, Eckler was more than half of those. And Kellen Moore's just not quite really working out how to use the guys that we do have. So Interesting. It is an opportunity for us to take advantage of. Whether or not we can execute that with the right personnel is yet to be seen. Their run game and run blocking now, they have added Cam Akers to the fold, but he's been in the building for all of 5 minutes. So we'll see what his impact and sort of understanding of the playbook. Was Kevin O'Connell with the Rams while Akers was there? Probably could have assessed that out, but I'm not quite sure. Either way, he's a decent back. And look, Matheson was fumbling the football last week, so we'll see. The run blocking also has been pretty average. So, look, you'd like to think that we could get the week 1 run game back in order, but we'll see. And it is an opportunity for us to take advantage of, because I do think the likes of Harrison Smith, pretty underrated safety. Staley spoke pretty highly of him, and I also wanted to talk about Ivan Pace as you did, Jack. Al, sorry. The rest of the defense just seems a little bit flat so far to start the year. So we'll see. We'll see how we go.
Did you notice that Flores has essentially benched their 2 early round picks, Lewis Seen and Andrew Booth? Can't see the field. They've got a Caleb Evans and Theo Jackson.
Correct.
Flores, man, they blitz all the time. They're playing deep off coverage on the back end as well, which is not what you'd expect from a Patriots acolyte. They're doing some weird stuff, but I think I'm with you, Andy. I think there are lots of ways to hurt this team. I don't think their corners are very willing tacklers. Byron Murphy doesn't want anything to do with it. Tonga and Lowry in the interior are rubbish interior linemen. Their offensive line is struggling as well. They don't have Darasaur. Well, he might come back, but otherwise they've got, like, their interior offensive line can be exploited. Lots of ways to get after him.
For sure. I mean, Cousins has been pretty good with getting rid of the ball quickly. He's got ample options. It's not just Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson is balling. KJ Osborne as well. Like, they've just, it's going to be a massive bloody test for this defensive back unit to get their shit together to try and cover those 4 guys. And even though a lot of it was fluff in junk time, Cousins is still a capable quarterback, and he's a fighter. He's a bit of a dork. If you've seen the Quarterbacks TV show, Netflix show, he's a bit of a dork, but God, he goes hard, and he's an awesome guy.
He's a lovely guy.
He really is. Yeah, he really is. So yeah, look, we'll see. We'll see. There is ample avenues for the Chargers to succeed against this team. It's whether or not we can put that into place and execute on those chances. What do you think the keys to victory are, and what Staley's going to do, Jack?
I mean, we've already talked about them. Best way to attack, run the ball. Best way to defend, know the passes are coming. But I've got a pigeonholed award here. This is more of a meta kind of analysis of the game. This is the playoff against the almost teams the media loves to say. They're neither dominant nor completely shit. They almost win games or almost lose them. Who's going to blink first? Because the team that comes out second best, we know that there are going to be storylines aplenty. Could we see Kirk go to New York? Could we see him throwing to Garrett Wilson? Who knows? There's been some rumblings there. Or do we see Staley coaching Costa Mesa High School special teams unit by week 5?
Kyle and Darren Bennett.
With Kyle and Darren Bennett. So, other than that, I'll do my prediction as well, and anyone can jump in. I'm going to be really negative here. Vikings 34, Chargers 28. Chargers lose.
Before I throw to you, Al, I would like to see strategic insertion of the blitz. Cousins' yards per attempt diminished by half when blitzed against the Eagles. Under pressure, his completion percentage falls to 46.7. Now, if we have Bosa operating excellently on a snap count, load up and get to him. We've really got to decrease his time to throw and put the pressure on a struggling O-line, as you say, Al. So obviously a lot of work to do for the cornerbacks. I'm with you, Jack, though. I think this is in Minnesota, both teams 0-2, both former playoff teams from last year. I've just been right in the cloud, and I've come to terms with 13-4 being out the window. So unfortunately, I agree, Jack. I think they're going to put up 30 points, and the Chargers will struggle to get 4 touchdowns. So one score loss, 0-3, and shit. Here we go. Mr. Pro Staley, what do you got?
Well, absolutely
Put your glasses
not.
on.
Absolutely not. Chargers win 31-28. We should say that Daniil Hunter had 3 sacks in the game, so they'd better have a tight end chipping on his side because the rest of the pass rushers can't do much for the Vikings. But no, this is going to be the third time where the offense has a chance late in the game to win the ball. The score's going to be 28-28, but this time we're going to march down the field and we're going to have a walk-off Cameron Dicker field goal, and my Dicker is going to be hitting the roof. Because there's no way that a team this talented starts the season 0-3. Book it in! Listeners, Chargers get the win against Minnesota at M&T Bank Stadium.
All right. Two of us have packed it in, and Al's still flying the flag. Yeah. It's good to see. We can't agree on everything. That shit gets boring. So we've talked about scissoring. We've talked about Dickers hitting the roof. We've talked about things getting blown up asses. It's been an interesting show, guys, but that's what happens when you're 0-2 and things are beyond disappointing so far. So let's hope it is a turnaround. I would love to be 0-3 on my predictions this year. I figure I would just reverse psychology it a little bit.
Me too.
And just,
exactly,
yeah.
me too. Yeah.
And just pick the Vikings and hope that, I've just got no clue. I've stopped punting on the NFL because I just lose money. I think I know something and it doesn't happen. So yeah, look, let's put the house on the Vikings and hopefully I'll lose that too. Anyway, guys, like I said, ride with us and cry with us. Hopefully it's a lot more tears. I hope we were as positive as you would have liked us to have been this week. It is 2 weeks into a 18-week season, 17 games. There's still a long way to go. Sure, the chances of playoffs are not against us. If we do fall, it's a bit of a bloody problem, but positive thinking, we have no control over it. Let's hope the players do. Anything from you guys before we sign it out?
Nope.
We'll see you next week on the Thunder Down Under Chargers podcast. Go Bulldogs!
Bye. Bye.
Back pedals looking, firing. He's got Floyd turning. Got it. Zigzag. 10, 5, high step. Touchdown!